Okay, so let's get started. I already have a couple of shapes open that I want to use, and I'm using this frame that's included in the stamping starter kit, and also this thank you phrase that I just got in the online store. You can use any shape that you have, or you can use your fonts to make your own custom lettering or your alphabet set or whatever you like. There are a couple things I suggest though. I wouldn't use a shape that has a lot of thin lines. You're not going to get as good of an image cutting out. It's going to be harder just because of the way that the stamping material is. So I would suggest something that doesn't have as many intricate lines. But you can go ahead and play around with it if you like and kind of see what works for you. But so I'm going to use this, I know I'm going to make a card and I'm going to use this frame and this thank you phrase. So what I like to do when I'm designing cards is just draw a square or rectangle, however big the card front is going to be, so I can scale my other items to fit onto the card. So I'm just making a standard size card, and so I'll just change, I think I'm going to do it landscape though. So I'll make the width 5.5 and the height 4.25 on my rectangle here. And then I'll just go ahead and arrange my frame and my thank you phrase on here. Now I'm not going to cut out the little flourishes on top of the thank you, so I'm just going to ungroup this and delete those pieces. And then I'll go ahead and regroup that thank you. Okay, so I want my frame to be landscape as well, so I'll just go ahead and rotate it. Just going up to the rotate window. And I think I'm going to do it in the bottom right here. And then layer the thank you over the top of the frame, kind of like this. Actually, let me ungroup this. I may separate those out. I think that'll be better. So I'm cutting the frame and the thank you out of the stamp material, so they'll both be stamped. I want to kind of be able to separate them from each other. So what I'm going to do is, rather than just stamping them both onto my card front, I want to stamp them onto a separate piece of paper. So the stamp has a paper that it fits right into, if that makes sense, and I'll show you that in just a second here. But so what I'm going to do is offset the shapes and cut those shapes out of paper, and then I'll stamp the shape onto the paper. So I'll just select my shape and go to the offset window, choose offset. I'm going to make it smaller here, and I think maybe I'll leave it at 0.1 for the frame. Okay, so now I've got the frame is separate from this piece, and I'll cut the frame out of the stamping material, but I'll cut this offset piece just out of a cardstock or something. And I'm going to do the same thing with the thank you. I'll just select them both and choose offset. And then I'm going to make this one, I'm going to make it just, I don't want it to cut out the holes in the O and the A, so I'll just make it big enough that it doesn't cut those out. So that seems just right. So now I've got my separate shapes, and I think I'm ready to go ahead and cut out my stamping shapes. So I'll just go ahead and move this square off. I'm going to move my offset shapes to the side also, because I'll be cutting those out of a different material. Now, one thing to note, the stamping mat is a little bit different. So when you go to your page settings, under cutting mat, you want to choose stamp, and you'll notice it changes the size down. It is 6 by 7.5, I believe. And I'm just going to rotate it so that the arrow's facing up. And I'll go ahead and rotate my shapes also. Oops. Wrong way. There we go. Okay, so I'm just going to place these onto the cutting mat. Just like that. And then when I go to my cut settings, I'm going to choose stamp material. And you'll notice that you're going to set your blade to 9. So this is probably the deepest cut setting that we have. So go ahead and set that to 9, and then you can go ahead and get your stamp material onto your stamp cutting mat. Okay, so I've got my special cutting mat here, and it's important to notice that there are holes in this cutting mat, little holes, and it is important to use this particular cutting mat with the stamping material. What the holes do is allow the stamping material to lay on without making any bubbles, and so that's really important. Otherwise the blade won't move over the stamp material smoothly. So here's the stamp material, and I'll just peel it off the backing sheet. You can save that backing sheet to store your finished stamps on later. So I'll just go ahead and set that aside, and then I'll just go ahead and lay on that stamp material onto the stamping cutting mat. So just gently lay it on, and then I'm just going to press it down. Rather than spread my hands across it like this and press it down, I'm just pushing straight up and down, because if you kind of spread it on, it will stretch the stamp material and create those bubbles that we talked about before that the blade won't move smoothly across. So it's really important to just press the stamp material onto the cutting mat. And then once we've done that, we just need to make sure that our little roller is in the right spot. If you're using your portrait, you won't need to change it, but if you're using your cameo, just make sure that the roller is clear to the left. And I'll just go ahead and push enter to load. Oh, I've forgotten to lock that back into place. There we go. Go ahead and push enter to load. And then I just need to change my blade. So also note that the stamp material, you do not want it to touch the rollers, and so you can see that it's not going to. I'll go ahead and change my blade to 9. You can see here. And then just go ahead and lock my blade back into place. So now we can just come back to Silhouette Studio, double check our settings, and go ahead and click cut. Alright, so once it's done cutting, you just need to push enter to unload. And here you can kind of see it a little bit. And then once it's all cut out, you can go ahead and just peel the stamp material off of the mat. The stamps won't come out right away. That's okay. We'll easily pull those out. And you can save that little oval for another shape if you want to, or you can just use it as its own shape. So what we're going to do is just kind of peel out the stamps. So you can see that it's connected in a few little places. I don't know if you can see that there. You just need to peel it out. Don't worry about ripping the stamp. It's pretty hard to rip it. But you can just go ahead and peel it right out. So now I'll just peel out the thank you. I'll be a little bit more careful with the letters, but again, you're just going to kind of tear it out. So there we go. And then I'll just poke out the little A, the hole in the A. And just to make you aware, you can flip these stamps over and use them either way. The stamp material is the same on both sides, so you don't need to worry about flipping the image in Silhouette Studio before you cut it out. So I'll just go ahead and poke out the U now. Again, just kind of peeling it out. And there we go. And of course I'll save that extra stamp material for future projects. Just go ahead and poke out the hole in the middle of the O. And I'm ready to go ahead and start stamping. So here I've got my card base and all of my pieces assembled, and I've already cut out those offset shapes in cardstock pieces. So I've got craft for my frame, and then I'm going to cut out the thank you, or stamp the thank you rather, on white. And I'm using the black ink that comes in the stamping starter kit. Of course, you can use any ink that you have on hand, but I find that black is a really versatile color and I use it a lot, so that'll work for me. Another thing to note is the stamping, any of you stampers out there will know this already, but stamping works best on a smooth cardstock. If you only have textured cardstock, it will still work, you just won't get as clean of an image. So here I've got my stamping blocks, and I can go ahead and lay my stamp on top. It does have a grid for you to line up your stamped images if you're cutting out something that's a straight line or words or something like that. I'll just go ahead and lay my frame on top here and just kind of press it into place. And then I'll grab my ink. I find it easiest with a larger image to just kind of put the ink onto the stamp. So just go ahead and do that. And it's fine if your ink gets on your block, no big deal, it wipes off. So once I've got my stamp all inked up, then because the block is see-through and the stamp is clear, you can just see exactly where you're going to stamp. So I'll just line it up on that outline shape and press down. And I just kind of walk my fingers around to make sure that I get the image cleanly stamped everywhere. And there we have it. Now, another thing I wanted to let you know, as you use the stamp, it will get kind of seasoned and you'll get cleaner stamped images after you've used it a little while. But it still gives a pretty good image the first time you use it. So with this particular ink, I find it easiest to clean it off with either a paper towel, dry, or a baby wipe. And so I've just got a baby wipe here. I'll just wipe it off really quick. It comes off really easily. Just wipe it clean. And then, of course, I will set that stamp aside to use again and again. And it's also a good idea to save that offset image in your library if you want to go along with your stamp, so that you can cut the offset image again and again. And of course you can offset it more or less than I've done here, or you don't have to do an offset at all. You can do it the exact same size as the stamp, whatever you prefer. But I just like to offset it rather than stamping it directly on my card base, at least in this case. So now we're ready to go ahead and stamp the thank you. I'm using a smaller block for this. The stamping kit comes with 3 sizes, and I will use the grid lines to line this up. And you can see I've just flipped that thanks over because we're going to stamp it. We need to make sure that the image is flipped before we stamp, so that when we stamp it, it's the right way. So just go ahead and grab my white. And it's kind of hard to see the white on white, I apologize, but with a smaller image you can just take it and dab that directly onto the ink pad. And if the ink kind of pools a little bit in certain places, you can just keep going back to the stamp pad, and eventually it'll just kind of work itself out. But like I said, as you use your stamps, they'll get a little bit seasoned and they'll just work better. So there we go. And you can see that's a nice clean image. And you can see it better here against my hand. So you've got the nice little outline. Again, you can make yours bigger or smaller than what I've done here, but this is a good size for what I wanted. And you can kind of see that it's really easy to take any image that you have and make it into a stamp. We've had a lot of people asking about how they can cut around their stamped images, and this is a great solution. Just make your own stamp and offset it and cut it, and you can stamp right on that offset. So now I'm going to go ahead and stamp the U, and I'll place that thanks aside to use again. Just go ahead and place this again upside down so that it will read correctly once I stamp it. Oh, and I can see that I've forgotten to take out that little tiny piece inside the loop of the Y. So let me just pull that out. There you go. And then I can place it back on my block. And I'll just ink that up, same way I did before, and just stamp that right onto my offset shape. So I love that the block is clear and you can just see right through. So if you've got it stamped and it looks a little bit mottled or you want it a little bit darker, because the block is clear, you can easily see through to just ink up your stamp again and just go right over it and double stamp it. And you'll get a really defined and darker image that way. So it's really easy to use, and once you've got your stamps created, you can just use them again and again. So I'll go ahead and place this on my card. You can see the finished card here. I've just added some twine and some washi tape, and I love the way the stamped image looks. So if you have any other questions about stamping, leave me a comment and I'll get back to you. Thanks for watching.